Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. I usually like to start off my speeches with some sort of nice introduction to the speech, something a little catchy to help get everybody into the speech. And this speech, I really don't need to because all I have to do is say murder, and murder is enough to really be catchy of what to catch everybody's attention. And that's really what the Parsha talks about. Talks about Cain and Hevel, the murder, the first very murder that ever happened. When you look at the murder, how did it come about? So we know the whole background story, but the pasuk has something very, very strange. The pasuk says, "Vayomer Cain el Hevel achiv," that Cain said to Hevel, and then it stops. And then it says, "Vahi biosim basadeh vayakam Cain el Hevel achiv vayargehu." And then it just says that when they're in the field, so Cain went and killed Hevel, and it doesn't tell us what they ever said. Well, it's like just leave us. We were just about to hear like what was the thing that drove him to murder his brother. Doesn't really say. Doesn't say that conversation. And when you think about it, that is how almost all fighting and hate happen. When the conversation stops. When there is no conversation. So then, in lieu of the conversation, what happens is there's hatred. And there's people start thinking about what other people did to them, and they never ever speak about it. They never talk it out. They never ever clear the air. And so therefore, one of the most important things that we have to deal with in life is conversation. I always like to say that marriage is one long conversation, and you can just better make sure that conversation never stops. But hopefully those are all good conversations, life conversations, things that you have to deal with in your relationships. But also in life, we have what's called difficult conversations. And this could be in business, this could be in friendship, it could be family. There's a lot of difficult conversations that people don't want to do, and often people don't do. And that causes more hatred and more anxiety. I just heard a podcast where somebody was talking about how could they approach their family members talking about the election when they so disagree on the election, and it always ends up fighting, and it's always uncomfortable, so they don't ever talk at all. They just don't. This woman never talks to her parents because they just see so differently on the election, and that's such a silly thing to fight about, in my opinion. There's only so much we could do in this thing, and to have family fights is wrong. But yeah, you should. But one should have conversation. You have to have conversation because a whole relationship is all about conversations. How do you have those difficult conversations? So there's some things that all the experts talk about in ways that we should approach difficult conversation. The first thing you should do is make sure that you spend time thinking about what exactly you want to say to somebody when it's a difficult conversation. The more you think about it, the more you should try to anticipate issues that will come up and how you'll deal with those issues. Sometimes if it's let's say it was that conversation with the election, you can always throw things back at the person and say, so what do you think about that? Sometimes that helps allow the person to express their opinion, and it allows them to get off their chest the thing that's bothering them, and by being able to listen to their opinion and making sure that another thing, summarize what that person says, so that person feels that they're heard, and that you're not just speaking at them and lecturing them, but you're giving opinion, and you can make sure that they understand. Could you please summarize what I said? And then you summarize what that person's opinion is. Sometimes it's a difficult message that you have to give forth to the person. If you're a boss and you have to give forth a difficult message, or sometimes to friends or to somebody you're working with or whatever. So it's best to try to bring out the difficult message right away, and not to go on a whole tangent and leave the person guessing to the situation. You bring it out in the very first. I've seen people do this very, very well. Well, they'll start off saying, in a very nice way, unfortunately I have bad news, but, and then they start explaining. If you use and a lot and you keep going and you explain it and a little bit, so therefore you allowing the conversation to for the person to be able to hear it and give an explanation for what it is, not just like leave them out, but not make them guess the whole time, especially if it's bad news. You don't want to make them keep guessing on what are you going to be saying to them. And you should make sure that you try to anticipate the reactions that the person's going to have, and try to find ways of minimizing the pain of the situation, and trying to make them feel better about the conversation. It's so important to talk and have these difficult conversations. And if you look back later on in life, you're much better off having the difficult conversation, even though it's hard to do. But you'll see that it's much better in the long term, even if it becomes very difficult at that moment. And sometimes you can't deal with it in that moment where they blow you off. But over time, it gives them a chance to think, and then you have another conversation with them. But as long as the conversations keep rolling and people don't shut each other out, so then the conflicts will be minimized. So on that, I wish you a great Shabbos.